Hello, everybody, and welcome to Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Where having a rowing coach only makes you better. Following a program gives you a true pathway to becoming a confident rower who's respected by your peers. You can become the athlete you want to row with. I'm Rebecca Caro, and I'm joined by my colleague, Marlene Royal.
Hello, Rebecca, and hello to our Faster Masters. Nice to be here.
It's very nice to be here. And now I'm going to kick off with something that I forget so regularly, which is to show people the wonderful photograph that is behind me. Take a look at that. That is Lake Bled in Slovenia, and they had the European Masters champs there, I think, this past weekend. So wonderful, wonderful photo. Rustam Zignavskin sent that in. And he actually had a whole ton of pictures, but wasn't that glorious?
Yeah, that was beautiful, beautiful. Years ago, I actually did a master's camp at Bled one year back in 2000. I think it was 2011, perhaps. But wonderful place. And in Slovenia, just as a little FYI, no motorboats are allowed on lakes, and the only motorboats are only allowed on Lake Bled during a regatta. They cannot use motorboats to coach at Lake Bled.
That's the same lake that I row on. Motorboats are there for safety, except at regattas where obviously they follow the races for umpiring. But yeah. It keeps the water amazingly clean. Although I kind of think electric coach boats must be a thing for the future.
Well, at Craftsbury, the coach boats are all electric now. So they're the pontoon boats, the smaller pontoon boats with electric motors, and it does. I mean, it makes a huge difference. And actually, one of the real benefits is the motor is not noisy, so exactly. you don't have to talk over the motor, which is really nice. But you need enough juice to be able to keep up with fast. The thing is having enough juice to keep up with fast crews. With singles, you can do it, but if they're really fast,
There's a guy I interviewed in the UK called Simon Johnston who makes an electric coach boat. So if anyone's interested, go and have a look in the Rowing Chat website on the directory, and you will find a link to Simon and his business. Now, the next big thing that's coming up for Marlene and myself is next week on the 6th of October, we're doing the Rigging for Masters webinar. We had a few questions about it. And so if you haven't yet bought your ticket, it's at fastermastersrowing.com/rigging. Just to be really clear, this is a standalone webinar with our three experts, Mike Purser, Mike Davenport, and Volker Nolte, plus Marlene and myself. It is not included as part of our training program subscriptions. So if you're a subscriber to the training program, you're not going to get this for free as part of your subscription. It is a standalone product. We obviously very much hope that you'll find it useful and worthwhile. And a reminder that if you do buy a standalone product, you have lifetime access to it. You will always be able to get back in and rewatch it, re-download any of the collateral. So for example, we know that we are going to be sharing a lot of really useful rigging charts, particularly the ones that Volker Nolte has been developing for all of the different popular oar designs and the different spoon designs. So that's going to be a resource that, trust me, that alone is worth the price of the webinar. So if you haven't yet bought your ticket, please buy it. And we very much hope that we'll see you live. If not, it is, of course, recorded and you'll be able to watch it later. For the nice lady in Perth, Australia, who got in touch and said, it's 2 a.m. for us.
Yes, we understand. Definitely.
We understand. This past week is the place where Marlene and I talk about the advocacy work that we're doing for Masters Rowing around the world. And I'm going to kick off. I have started some discussions with a couple of rowing federations who want to improve their offering for Masters. So if you are listening and you think that the federation who runs rowing in your country could up their game, please get in touch with us and find out who the person is at the federation who's in charge of, for example, memberships or education. Sometimes it's coach education, sometimes it's general education. Very few have magazines, sadly, anymore. But if you can find out who that person is and introduce us, we would love to go and talk to them. What's your week been, Marlene?
My week has been very good, actually. Very nice water on to be on the water this week. But I should mention that we had the head racing article on the Ludum website.
We did.
That came up recently for us. And my next article, which I submitted this week, which will come up on Rowing News Magazine, is about fartlek training, which is a really fun style of training. So it's a nice way to do intervals and be creative with it. And especially since it's head racing season, do some practices that are a little bit more like being in actual race situations when you might have to respond to passing crews or obstacles or collisions, going fast, slowing down, variability. So fartlek training is a really nice way to kind of do some race simulation type work. So that's what I was writing about this week for Rowing Magazine, which will come out in the next issue.
That's fantastic. I'll see if I can find the link to the head racing article. We had a fantastic email from someone who's preparing for the Head of the Charles on our Head of the Charles program. And it was really interesting because in analyzing the race afterwards, he said that he realized he had been a little bit too cautious in his approach. Marlene, can you talk through what were the key things that were the learnings that came out from that?
Well, I think plus your first race of the year, you're probably always a little bit cautious, right? And I think that that's definitely something in head racing where kind of you have to build confidence to know that you can row that race pace. So I think having the fact that he had this early race and can build on that for upcoming Head of the Charles, gives more confidence that, I can get into a rhythm and push that early race a little bit harder, because you do have to have, it's not just mental confidence. You have to have confidence in your fitness, and you have to prove to yourself that you can do it. You have to be able to do it. So often I'll recommend to people, think of this like a 2,000-meter race, but just keep going. You know what I mean? So, you have to build up a little bit. And I know Rebecca always has a really good strategy for the first minute or two of the race to build up the rhythm and get the boat going, and, and then build upon that. But, and that's definitely important to get in sync, get in rhythm, get your flow going. But I think, knowing that you've got the fitness, if you've been doing the training and you've been zeroing in on, especially like in the head racing program, we give some very specific guidelines in a workout, how to zero in on what your rate is right now. If you can do that, you can be pretty confident you can do that in a race, given all factors are equal and good, not if you didn't sleep the night before, or you ate the wrong food or something like that. But like we're saying that all conditions are very stable, and you're rested and ready to go. It's a very good indication of how you can row. So I think you can be confident doing that. So, but the experience, getting 1 or 2 races under your belt before Head of the Charles definitely helps, for sure.
Yeah, it does. And I think one of the good things about a preparatory race is that it's an opportunity to deliberately make mistakes. So an obvious mistake might be deliberately try and see if your mid-race rating could be 1 point higher than you think it probably should be, and see what effect that has on the overall. You're not throwing away the possibility of a win. What you're doing is testing under race conditions your capabilities. And you could say, right, I'm just going to try this for 3 minutes or 2 minutes of the race. I'm going to try going over at 27 instead of 26. And then you'll have a whole load of data that you can analyze afterwards, What was the boat speed like? Did it affect your steering? Was your rhythm disrupted? Mentally, how did you feel? Physically, how did you feel? And so that's the sort of thing where you can do these little experiments. And the good thing about them is that it's in race conditions. If you do it in
Absolutely.
training, it's just not quite the same.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. And you know, your trials, you can experiment in your trials, push the envelope here, try a little bit different strategies. Again, make your mistakes in your trials. That's what they're for, to help refine the race plan. But the race has that added element of the night before.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. And one of our live watchers has said, so I can use the results of the 5K piece last Saturday to see what I can hold. Absolutely. That's exactly what we're doing. And remember, the goal of your head race, as in all races, but it's particularly noticeable because head races are that much longer. Your goal is to hold the maximum boat speed you can sustain for the entire distance. That's it. It isn't any more complicated than that, except that we know that there are so many variables that go into it that it can feel like, well, what if I changed two things instead of one thing? And what was the outcome? And oh, it was windy when I went around that corner, or I steered poorly. So actually, this is one of the reasons I personally love head racing so much. There are so many things that you have to string together successfully to have a great outcome, that the challenge for me is always there.
No, absolutely. And you know, if you take a race like the Head of the Charles in Boston, I think I can say with all honesty that to win that race, you have to do everything perfectly, because it's so complicated with the steering. You know, you can lose 15 or 20 seconds like nothing if you don't steer correctly. You can hit a bridge. You can clash with another crew. It just depends. But I mean, honestly, I think if one little thing goes off, that race is so competitive, you will not win the race unless it's perfect. And you know, when it's perfect, somebody will usually say, oh my gosh, I just rode a perfect race. I mean, you know, over and over again, they'll come back with that. But there's just, because it's so complicated, that it really tests the skill of the athlete all around, you know, mentally, physically, steering wise, obstacle wise, everything, buoys.
Yeah, totally. And that is the challenge. And if you enjoy challenges, challenging yourself, that is one of the reasons I like rowing so much.
Absolutely. Remember when we did the Racing Starts Challenge, and Leslie Wright was our guest, and she on YouTube has that race of the Chinook crew that set the record. I did the training program for that crew, and it is her coxing this race, and they had to come to a complete stop in the middle of the race and then start again, and they still won with the course record. But if you look up Chinook on YouTube, that is, you can watch that race of her coxing, and it's amazing. So it'll give you a feel for the course, no doubt.
They had to do that for context because a crew was cutting across in front of them near a bridge. And so in order to take the corner well, she decided they needed to stop and then restart. I mean, it was momentary, but the entire crew stopped, easy or way enough, and then rode off again. Very interesting. It's great tactics from her.
Yeah. Well, she didn't want to T-bone that other eighth, which would have been very bad, right? So you don't want to be in the bow seat, right? So
now our big topic this week is tools for rowing. And we thought it would be a great place to start would be to ask Marlene to show us what's in her tool bag. So over to you, Coach.
Okay, well, first I'll show you, if I'm just out rowing in my single, this is the mini tool bag. Okay, so these are the things that I always keep with me just in case something goes wrong. And one of the things I think is most important is a wrench for your whichever size your top nut is on your oarlock, because that's obviously fairly critical in your single. If your top nut comes off and your oarlock comes off, you're in bad shape out there on the water. So so I carry with me a 10 millimeter, which is the size of my top nut. If you have a standard top nut like a 7/16, or it could be a 1/2 inch wrench, carry that, but carry whatever size wrench is your top nut wrench for your oarlock. I think that's really critical. I carry a small adjustable with me because you also have to think about the bottom of your oarlock and your pin. And so that could be a few different sizes. So you can either carry the wrench for your size. I carry an adjustable so that if I feel that bottom nut comes loose, I just routinely check it before I go out on the water. I can always tighten it if I feel something's not right. And then I also have an adjustable in case I need it for something else. Depends how your rigger is attached to your boat. With my boat, I don't need tools to de-rig. I just have thumb screws for my wing, so I don't have to worry about that. But this is good. And also, in case you're rowing with somebody else and they have a problem, if you've got an adjustable, you can usually help somebody else. The other little thing is a pusher outer. And this little pusher outer is for those nasty little washers that you have to push out with your thumb if you want to change the height of your oarlock. And I carry this with me most of the time so I can help somebody else, because on my boat, mine are actually really easy to change. And since you're rowing your own boat, you usually don't have to change them that often. But sometimes when you're going to help somebody else on the water, and I'll back up. This is when you do AAA on the water. I back my stern right up under their rigger and come up to their oarlock and help them if they've got to adjust their height. So I carry the little pusher outer in case those washers are really tight. So that's what I carry routinely in my single, along with a bungee cord. I always have a bungee cord in my boat in case I have to tie my boat up somewhere, or if there's a situation somebody has to secure their oar handles together, like somebody has to get in their boat and they need to hold their oar length. But I always carry a bungee cord as well, just to, if I leave my boat on the water and I get in and run into the boathouse and come out, I tie my boat up. So I always have a bungee cord too.
Is that one of those ones that has a metal hook on the end that they used to use for car roof racks?
Exactly. Yep. I have two.
How long is it?
Mine is probably
2 foot, 1 foot?
Probably 2 feet. 2 feet.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I used to always keep that all the time. Yeah.
A couple of them, because we used to use bungee cord for when we were doing strength training, resistance training. But I haven't. Right. Our best question so far. Tony Tarlow says, "Where do you find the pusher outer?" So, Tony, we're going to let you into a secret. Am I allowed to do this, Marlene? Can I reveal?
Yes, you are.
So, we know that these are no longer available for sale. And so we are investigating getting a load of them made, but we want to be sure that there are people who would buy them if we were going to make them. So, Tony, question for you and everyone who's listening. If we pull together an order for, a couple of hundred of these, would you guys, Faster Masters, buy them? So there you go. Answers on a postcard. No, I'm joking about the postcard. Just get in touch with us, tag us in social, tell us what you think. We are literally in the process of getting prices for having them made right now. And I think it looks really, really good. So Cece says Margaret Christopher makes them. Is she the lady you know, Marlene?
I know her, but I don't know if does she make this exact one, Cece? I don't know.
Cece, get in touch with us and introduce us to Margaret. That sounds marvelous. There's a few people who seem to think that they would buy a pusher outer if we.
I think there's probably more than one in the world. Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. So So we will take a look at that. Thank you for the instant feedback from you wonderful people. Now, Marlene, when you're in a coach boat, you have a slightly different tool bag. What's in that mix?
Okay, so I have this is not my major rigging tool bag. I just have a little bag like this that I keep essential things in when I'm in the coach boat. If I'm doing a serious rigging project, I have a big toolbox that has lots of other things. So I have in there the things I've already mentioned, my single, the adjustable wrench. I have both metric and standard wrench for the top bolt, our pusher outer. And then I carry with me 3 screwdrivers. So I have This is the driver to adjust a Concept 2 oar, to adjust the length of a Concept 2 oar. Then I have a flathead screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver, because for croaker oars, I need a Phillips head screwdriver. And in Concept 2, if you have to undo the clamp on the oars, that's a flat screwdriver. So then, depending which oars people have, I can adjust that. This wrench is also, it's another 10 that I have. This is an 8. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the 8 is little, and what the 8 is for is if somebody's got stabilizing pontoons, the 8 is the screw that attaches the bracket to the pontoons. So those are things we also routinely check, because they're always, you know, they get moved around a lot. So we check those, and this is the 8 in case that comes loose. I have a tape measure that is metric. So it's both standard and metric. So I carry that with me. And this is a 5-meter tape. I carry a Sharpie magic marker with me. And every coach has white electrical tape and a pair of scissors. So white electrical tape, if you get a little ding on a boat, you've got to cover it right away. It's dry and you can cover it right away. You can put white electrical tape on it until you have a chance to repair it. Also, if we need to label things, I might use electrical tape, and then also the marker to label things in the boathouse. Like things come up like, oh, the oar label fell off, and you have to make sure that the right oars go with the right boat. So these are the things I carry with me kind of all the time in the coach boat. And honestly, it's very rare that I've ever been in a situation when this couldn't do enough to get us back to the boathouse. So
that's the key, isn't it? The key is when you're on the water, can you get to the bank and back to the boathouse safely with a kind of running repair?
Exactly. You know, or sometimes like somebody's collar comes loose on their oar, and that's usually difficult to row if your oar has pushed through the entire oar lock, right? So things like that. But it usually, this has been, in general, this has been enough to handle most things on the water. And it's not so bulky, you can't carry it around easily with you.
That's the other important thing. What was so fun when we compared notes when we were planning this episode, that Marlene and I have very, very similar tools for the coach boat. So I have a Stanley knife rather than the scissors. I have the electrical tape. I'm married to an electrician, as he always says, tape is cheap, use lots of it. So I have all of those. I have a couple of other things, like I have actually this is, I can never find it when I need it. I am obsessive about picking up nuts and washers that I see lying around the boathouse. And I have this, which is a little old-fashioned film canister, if people are old enough to remember when we had film. And inside there are all the nuts and washers and bolts and random things that I kind of found lying around in the grass, because you never know when they might come in useful. And the rubber seal cap is really great because it grips. I mean, it doesn't need to be waterproof, but it is. And it's just so if you know someone who's a photographer, ask them to give you some of those.
Yeah, that's nice because it's not too big. And again, if you are out on the water with other people from your club and you know that the club boats use this size nuts, in case something falls off a rigger, if you've got 1 or 2 spares, that can really save the day sometimes.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out, for the whole of the United States of America, the rest of the world is metric. We all use the same size nuts. Actually, having said that, there is one quad in our boathouse where one of the rigger bolts has an 11mm nut. We don't quite know why, but it was probably an emergency repair back in the day, and nobody ever changed it back.
Right. So this one is a 10 and an 11.
Yeah, at each
end. But yeah,
that's
weird. Usually they're 10. So
yeah. So here's a nice feedback from a listener. I'm short, so I always have a short bungee with me in my single, because our dock isn't wide and I can use it to attach the dock side blade to the dock for stability when reaching to my waterside oar lock. I like that suggestion. I would say you might want to try, when you're kneeling and leaning across your boat to try and reach that far side, try extending one leg backwards so that it's much further behind you. Even if the dock is narrow, you can do it parallel to the boat. It's a little bit like the principle of going out on thin ice, you know, on a ladder, so that you distribute your weight more evenly. You'll find yourself a little bit more secure. And our CC carries a beach anchor to secure her boat just off the shore and prevent it floating away from the rocks and the mussels if the wind picks up and she has to come in.
Oh,
Very,
that's kind of
very
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Spare hardware is really essential. It certainly is. You can use the other end of the pusher outer to loosen super tight wing nuts, says LV Richards.
Oh,
Very
yes.
good.
Laverne, that is a great point. Thank you. And nice to see Laverne from Vancouver. Yes.
Hey,
That's
Laverne
true.
from Vancouver.
I forget about wing nuts because I don't have them and I don't have any wing nuts in my boat just because my foot stretchers are a through bolt. But absolutely for club boats, very good idea. I wonder if there's a tool to get those nasty little wing nuts underneath the tracks.
Yep, there is. I have it.
I knew you would
So
have it.
we have a club boat that actually the wing rigger attaches with wing nuts as well. So wing nuts are, you know, don't forget them. Now's my time to shine because I'm going to show you my 3 favorite gadgets. I will say these are ones that are in my generic tool bag. They're not ones that I take in the boat. First off is this. So this is a 10mm spanner wrench, but it has a long handle on it. And this is really, really good for when you want to change the height of the foot stretcher, because usually the shoes attach with 2 or 3 nuts that are down the foot plate. And it's really fiddly to try and get a normal spanner in between the 2 shoes. In fact, I have had situations where it wasn't even spaced on either side of the nut to get a spanner in order to rotate it, particularly around the ball of your foot where the shoes are at their widest. So this is a really, really neat tool. There are better versions of this, which are like this, because they have a T-bar handle. So you can really get good purchase on them. So this one is really not very good for doing the final tightening or that first bit of unloosening on a very tight one. This one, however, is actually a hex, what do you call them? Allen key. Thank you.
Yeah, Allen key or hex key.
That's right. So, but it gives you get the idea. This is my wing rigger does up with a hex key. But you get the idea. So if it's a very handy thing to have, particularly if you want to adjust the height of your shoes. Now, my second favorite tool is this. You can see if I hold it right in front of my face, it is the exact shape of the Martinoli nuts, which are either the swing arms on your gate, and sometimes Martinoli nuts are used on foot stretchers, and they can get quite tight. So you can put this over the top and use it to loosen or tighten those nuts. And the tiny little slot, you can see there's a horizontal line below it. That is for the pinch finger thumb screws. Because again, even though they're a couple of centimeters high, sometimes they're quite hard to loosen. And it's a deliberately short little tool. As you can see, it's made of nylon and it's just on a lanyard here. It's deliberately short because sometimes the foot stretchers are so close to the side of the boat, you again haven't got much angle or purchase to get onto the tool and then to rotate it. So it's so frustrating when you have to put it on and twist a tiny bit, put it on again and twist a tiny bit. So this is a really handy tool, which is, I found this here in New Zealand.
I like that.
My third favorite gadget is this. This is my pitch gauge, and it's made, it was originally designed by the man who invented the Row Perfect row machine. That's why it says CARE, which is Casper, C-A, Rekers, R-E. That was his name. And it's really good because it's stainless steel and it has the 90-degree angle, which is the part that you put against the pin or the back of the gate, is a fixed angle. It doesn't have a hinge on it. So I do have one of the other popular these pitch gauges, but this has a hinged back. And one of the problems with a hinge is it introduces potential sources for error, particularly as you cannot tighten these screws. It's just a pin. And I don't know for certain that that is exactly 90 degrees around there. Whereas with this, it's freaking stainless steel. You're not going to be able to change it. And so that is something that I particularly like. And it has the spirit level. And it also has, though, a wing nut here. So you can actually tighten up the two arms. You basically push them together and there's a grade down the slope, which shows you the number of degrees. And if you hold it up to the sky, like I'm holding it up in front of me now, you can see really clearly at the point where the two meet, at the intersection, that's how many degrees you've got. So I like that a lot. And lastly, just for Marlene, the tool for your wing nuts. So this is one that was made by a very canny Dutchman who lived in New Zealand, and he bought offcuts from saw blades. So these are toughened steel. He made this tool in two parts. So at the end there, you can see it has a 10 mil nut on the end. And then it has two prongs, one of which has a little loop for the lanyard to go through it. Those two prongs slide over the wing nut and then you can rotate them. So that is very good for wing nuts. And it also works for the bung on coach boats, because many clubs, you undo the bung when you take the boat out of the water, but it's actually quite hard to get the purchase on it. So he originally designed this for the bung on coach boats. Thank you, Bruce Lodder. You're a very smart gent. But I also use it for wing nuts.
Yeah, because underneath the tracks, it can be very difficult to get in there depending on the boat and how far you have to reach. But the other thing is sometimes people really over tighten them, and they don't have to be over tightened. They over tighten them and then they get water and they get dirt in there, and they can be very, very difficult to get a good purchase on it and open it. So tighten them snugly, but do not over tighten them. But, it's better just to check them from time to time and, make sure your tracks aren't loose. But over tightening them is definitely a difficult problem to do. Oh,
right. Well, there we go. Wasn't that fun? I rather enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, it's sort of one of those things, like we live with these, we have them with us all the time. And, it just becomes, it's such a normal part of your packing up to go out on the water. You actually kind of, you take it for granted sometimes, but a well thought out kit in your boat can definitely get you out of a pinch for sure.
Now I'm going to finish with my friend Duncan's favorite tip. When you're in the boat park or at the rowing club and someone comes up and says, "Can I borrow your spanner?" And you say to them, what do you say, Marlene?
Oh, I hate sharing my tools.
But, I mean, so what do you say? How do you politely say to them?
Oftentimes, you know what, if I let somebody use it, I'll stay there and wait till they finish using it and until they give it back to me, because they'll disappear otherwise. The other thing is label your tools. That little piece of tape, label your tools, but definitely keep track of them. I mean, as much as you trust people, they get distracted, they forget, they may not intentionally not give it back to you, but tools have a way of walking away. So my response is, this spanner is a boomerang. It comes back. So I make my point. I also tell them, look, please understand, I am really possessive about my tools and I will get really grumpy. So I tell them what the penalty is. But then I say to them, give me your sunglasses or your mobile phone. And they give them to me. And I say, you can have that back when you bring me the spanner back, particularly as a regatta, less so in the rowing club, because in the rowing club, someone will probably leave it on a chair, or I'll tell them, put it back in. I have a very bright pink tool bag, but it's really good because then they'll go, where are my sunglasses? And then they'll remember where their sunglasses are. Yeah, I like that. Ransom, hold it ransom.
Yeah,
it's a deposit, exactly. Right? It's a deposit.
Exactly.
That's good. That's good. I will use that.
Julie says she got her name engraved on her tools. Her rigger jigger is over 20 years old and it always comes back. Nice idea, Julie. I think that the thing about the ransom, when I was a kid, there was a wonderful children's book illustrator called Richard Scarry, and he had this character who was a gorilla who wore an overcoat. I have no idea, just go with me. And he used to kind of open the overcoat on one side, and he had all of these wristwatches, and then he had them like all the way up his arm. And I kind of feel like the coach is a bit like that. In the pocket of your jacket, you have 5 mobile phones and you have 2 pairs of sunglasses on your hat, because you collected them from people who they're going to remember why they haven't got their sunglasses.
No, I think that's a fantastic idea. Get a deposit. People will remember. Better yet, have your own little toolkit. Even if you row club boats, have something that you take with you in the boat for emergencies. Just at least know what's typical for the boat you row. What 2 or 3 important things could help you. And I know of a situation recently where somebody went out and the collar came loose on their oar and went right down the shaft. And it was May, the water was cold. That's a pretty difficult situation when your collar isn't attached, right? So getting, hopefully, I also stay relatively close to the shore when I row. I'm not one of those people that goes like way out in the middle of the lake, but some people do. So you have to think about those from a safety point of view. If something happens, you want to be able to get in. But if you've got a few small little tools like that, you could have repaired that in the boat without disaster hitting. So
precisely. One of the worst ever Christmas presents I gave my sister, I gave her a complete toolkit for rowing, 2 spanners and a tape measure and a screwdriver. And she was furious. She thought it was a complete waste of a Christmas present.
She wanted something else, obviously.
She wanted something else.
But I bet she uses it. So
exactly. No, you can never have too many tools.
No.
Now, I do have one final tip for boat clubs. If you have boathouse owned tools, a shared toolbox, one of the things that you can do, in addition to, naming things and marking them and painting them in club colors to ensure that tools don't get lost in the long grass, is to use all of those backstays that have got bent over the years and are just kind of sitting on a shelf somewhere as spares. Cut down the backstay and buy a length of chain from your hardware store. So the chain goes from the tool to the backstay. The backstay is quite long and you can paint it in bright colors. It's really hard to put a backstay or even a half a backstay into your pocket. And for this reason, it creates another incentive for people to bring their tools back and to make sure that the club tools do stay in the club.
Yeah, or have a back on your tool bench. If you have 6 hooks with 6 spanners, at the end of the day, there should be, you should be able to see really quickly one's missing, or, have a set way that things are hung up. And then, we're missing 1, we're missing 2. And
exactly. Sometimes I've seen this in bicycle workshops. They draw an outline of the tool under the hook, so that the correct tool is on the correct hook. Laverne says our club used car touch-up paint to mark our riggers in case they get accidentally picked up by another club at a regatta. Or paint or nail varnish, she says, also works. That's a good one. Yeah, Karen in my club, she uses nail varnish. Yeah. Yeah, Julie says they have a pegboard with outlines. I mean, it is nice to have tools in the club, but they are just so walkable.
Definitely. Yeah, and it costs money too, I mean, it may not seem like a huge amount of money, but if each wrench costs $6 or $7 and you lose 4 or 5 of them, somebody's got to replace them, right? So
exactly. Well, thank you everybody for being with us on Faster Masters Rowing Radio this week. This has been the show dedicated to masters athletes who want fun, fitness and confidence in their rowing. You can become a student of the sport by buying a Faster Masters Rowing program subscription today. Go to fastermastersrowing.com/join, and we look forward to welcoming you. For those of you who are joining us on the rigging webinar, it'll be next week. We very much look forward to seeing you there. Any last words, Marlene?
I think keep up your good preparation for head racing. You know, it's going to be a fun month. There's lots of events going on in the United States for sure. And Canada has added some races. So, you know, October is a pretty busy month as far as Faster Masters rowing athletes racing.
Go forth and multiply. Enjoy it, folks. Bye-bye.